Hello, welcome to Mississippi Family Homestead, our new live stream. We want to thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to be talking about the most asked questions for raising chickens. Maybe you're getting some new chickens, or you just got chickens and you're wanting to kind of know what's going on there. We've done a little research, looked around at the most asked questions all around the internet on some different chicken blogs and stuff like that. So we'll jump right into it.
Yeah, we just want to give you an idea of what it takes to raise some chickens, and there's some frequently asked questions that people have asked about raising chickens, and if you never raised chickens, then you just don't know. Now, I personally had chickens my whole life. When I was little, I grew up with chickens, and they were, my best friend growing up. I would climb in the chicken pen with them and talk to the baby chickens and crawl around with them. And then when we moved to the homestead, I wanted chickens again. So we've had chickens for about 5 or 6 years now, and in that time I've really learned a lot about chickens, and I feel like I can tell you a little bit at least about raising chickens, but we'll try to answer those questions. So what's our first question?
All right, this is one I get asked a lot, probably the most asked one, and it's, if I get chickens, do I have to have a rooster for eggs?
No, you do not have to have a rooster to have your hens to lay eggs. So it's kind of more complex, I guess, than that. There's always lots of questions around that. Well, how come? So if you want to have a reproduction cycle and reproduce your chickens and raise them, then yes, you do need a rooster. Now, there's pros and cons. I would say, let's talk about when it could hurt. Now, if you don't have enough roosters, the rooster to ratio hens is 10 to 1. So you need at least 10 hens to your one rooster. So if you don't have that, they can get stressed out. They don't like it when there's not enough hens. It just at least takes 10 hens for that one rooster. And another question you might get asked is, well, should you have more than one rooster? Well, if you want more than one rooster, that's okay. But you can check out our video about this. But a lot of people are like, well, how do you have 2 roosters, in the same area? Does that work? It can work, but you do have to raise those 2 roosters together most of the time. You can introduce them to each other, but they're going to fight if you don't raise them together. So, yeah, they kind of need to be raised together. And if you're planning on having a bunch of hens and roosters, that's fine. Just remember the ratio. You need 1 rooster to 10 hens. And also, another thing about the roosters is they're really loud. So if you're not on a homestead or out in the country somewhere, then you may not want to have a rooster.
Like if you live in an HOA or something like that.
You'll get some complaining. If you just want to have hens, they're not quite as loud as the roosters are, but they can get pretty loud. Sometimes they like to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and crow. So just remember that if you're going to have a rooster. Now, they are good if you free range. Those roosters, they take care of their hens. They don't like anybody messing with their hens. They'll come up to you, kind of bow up to you if they think you're doing something bad to their hens. I've seen videos where they'll kill predators, kill snakes, kill hawks or whatever, if those hawks are going after their hens. And they really don't like that. So they're good protectors of their hens. And also, if you want to raise chickens, have fertilized eggs, you have to have your rooster. And so whether you're going to incubate them or whether you're going to let that hen naturally sit on those eggs, then it's really good to have that rooster in the flock.
Right. So the next question is, when you get those new chickens, maybe you bought some new chickens at Tractor Supply. I think most everybody's reason for getting chickens is to have the fresh eggs. How long are you going to have to wait before you get some eggs just like this right here?
Yeah. So we'll talk about these again in a minute. But So most people around here, either you'll order your chickens from a hatchery or you get them from a supply store. Tractor Supply or a co-op usually has chickens in the springtime. So if you're going to get chickens that's little like that, it does take some time for those baby chickens to grow up and have eggs, and that's the whole purpose, right? So it takes 5 to 6 months for most breeds to start laying eggs. And then when they get to that 5 or 6 month time period, it will only be maybe a few eggs at first, maybe one a week, and it takes probably about 4 weeks for them to start from the time they start laying till they work up to laying those eggs all the time. And so you just need to keep that in mind. Now, you can raise chickens in the fall time. Tractor Supply has chickens late into the fall.
I think we were in there just last weekend,
yeah,
and they had some new chickens.
Yeah, they
in there,
did.
Little baby chickens.
So, especially down in the South, as long as you can keep those baby chickens warm, they'll be fine. Just keep them warm through the winter, and then by the time spring comes, they'll be ready to lay those eggs. And you want to keep in mind also your egg production will go down in the winter anyway. So your baby chickens grow up and they start laying their eggs in 5 to 6 months. Well, then if you're in a cold climate, you're not going to get very many eggs in the wintertime. So you may want to look at that, is being able to raise them in the wintertime and raising them like that. Just lots of factors there. Also the breed, like what type of breed they are. A lot of people, the dual purpose of having a chicken is so they can lay their eggs. So you want to get a breed that's going to lay the most eggs. So a good breed is like the Rhode Island Reds. There's Orpingtons, those will lay good eggs. And some people may just want to, have the chickens around because they like them, and they'll get some bantams. A lot of people like the bantams because they're little and small, and you can kind of tame them up and hold them, and they're cute as they can be, like our silkies.
Yeah.
Oh, our silkies are so cute.
If you want to see those silkies, we have a live camera every day that we put on that's right there at their level, following them around.
Yeah.
It's on our channel, Mississippi Family Homestead. We do stream that live. We start the stream at daylight.
Yeah.
Every morning.
Nothing's cuter than a little silky chicken, and even when they're little, any chicken is just.
One of them's starting to try to crow.
Yeah, it is. At 3 months, it's like crowing. I can't believe it's crowing like that. It's so funny. So yeah. So what's our next?
All
what
right,
are we doing?
so
What's our next?
How long do chickens usually live?
Okay.
Based on where they are and their environment and their breed, I'm sure that has something to do with it too.
So their breed has a lot to do with it. If they are Orpingtons, Rhode Island Reds, Australops, those are the breeds that live the longest. Now, I've seen chickens live up to 12 years personally. We had a chicken growing up that was my friend, and Henny Penny, she would actually spend time with us. She thought she was human, but anyway, she did live till about 12. She was a pretty old chicken. So she was a Rhode Island Red, and she lived to 12 years old. But you do need to put some research into that, because also, just because they live that long doesn't actually mean they'll have egg production that long. They may live 10 years, but they may stop laying eggs when they're 5 years old. I have a black Australop, and it only laid eggs for the first 2 years, and she is 6 years old, and she's no longer laying eggs. So, you just want to keep that in mind also. So, the Isa Browns don't live quite as long, but they have egg production a little bit longer than other chickens do. So that's just a factor that it's a big factor about the breed. Also, their environment. I'm sorry. They need to keep cool in the summertime and warm in the winter, and that'll help them last longer too. And sometimes you'll have some factors when they free range. Excuse me.
And by the way, if you're watching us live or if you're watching the replay, let us know if you have chickens or have some other questions. So right there in the live stream, want to thank the ones that are there and the ones that are watching us on the replay too. So you ready for the next one?
Yeah.
All right. So for a family of 4, how many chickens do you need if you want to if you want to use eggs for your household for breakfast and stuff like that? If somebody's thinking about getting some chickens,
Okay.
how many do they need?
So one thing is really how many eggs are you going to eat a day? So, if you're a family of 4 and you eat eggs every day, then you're going to need at least 8 hens to lay those eggs every day. But also, you may be somebody that likes to cook with eggs a lot, because eggs go in a lot of things. Cakes, anything that you bake, they go in. I love to make just boiled eggs or make stuffed eggs or anything like that. And if you're going to use them for that, then you do need about 8 hens for your family of 4. Because you're not just going to, use those for breakfast. You may use them for other things too. So, but if you're not going to eat eggs or use them often, then I would say 4 or 5 hens would be great for your family if you wanted to raise just the hens for egg production.
So then another question is, if you're just starting out, is how to house them. So you may go to Tractor Supply, get a pre-made chicken coop. We have done that. We've ordered them on Amazon, and then we later built one. But anyway, so how much space is needed for the chickens?
So at least 10 square feet per chicken. So I want to say this: a lot of people, they go out and they buy these prefabricated chicken pens, and they don't last long. And also, unless you're willing to spend a good bit of money on a prefabricated chicken pen, they're usually too small for what you want. If you're only going to have 2 or 3 chickens, then they're usually great. But if you're going to have 8 hens and a rooster, 10 hens and a rooster, you need a pretty good amount of space for those chickens. So just keep in mind, it's probably better just to, you can get a prefabricated one for them to roost in, during the day. And then if you're going to free range, then it's great. If you want to just have that small area for them, because they're only going to be in there during the day. Not during the day, at night, and roosting there at night. So if they're going to free range, it's good. But if you're not going to free range, then that's not good, just to keep those, that many chickens in that small area. Now, you can get that and build you a fenced-in area around that if you want to, and you don't want them to free range. You can do maybe that. That's what we done. We put that for prefabricated chicken coop inside a fenced area, and then they were able to run around in there during the day, and we would shut them up at night, and that worked really good.
And we also lifted it up. We built a platform so they could go under, get a little more area when it rained. But, but you do need to make sure they're not too small. No,
it's bad. They sell them for that, and then you get them, and you're like, well, goodness, this is. It may be great when they're little, but they do grow. So. All
right, the next question is, how many nesting boxes do you need inside that chicken coop?
So a lot of people are like, if I'm going to have, 8 hens, I got to have 8 nesting boxes, but that's not true. Usually the hens, they'll lay all in the same nesting box. Unless you've got 30 chickens in there, then you don't need but about 2 nesting boxes. They like to lay in the same area, and I don't know what that is. And they'll fight over it too. If one's sitting there laying, then another one will go in there trying to, make them get off the nest so they can lay their eggs. So I would say make sure that that nesting box is big enough for 2 grown chickens. So they can both sit in there side by side if they want to, and they're not fighting over it. But usually about 2. And also, the roosting area, you want to make sure that you just have a place for them to go at night where they're safe. And, you know, you want to have at least 3 or 4 roosting places for them to go at night, so they can be safe, and so they'll have an area to themselves and not be all squished up in there.
All right, the next one I get, people ask me that all the time, and she's the one that's really familiar with the chickens. I just am kind of the person that builds the things, but they'll get their new chickens, and one of the big questions, what do I feed the chickens?
Okay, so there are several factors in that, and I want to spend a little time maybe talking about what to feed them and what you can do with them. So one thing is, keep in mind if you're going to free range them, they're out digging in the grass, eating bugs and grasshoppers and seeds and everything else. And they don't need quite as much nutrition, I would say, if they're out free ranging as they do if they're not free ranging. Now, I have a few chickens that are free range that I gave to my daughter-in-law, so she lets hers free range. There's 4 of them. And mine are not, though, that are back here. They're actually not free range. So if they're not free range, you want to keep in mind that they do need some kind of extras sometimes. So we feed them, although my visual aids here, you can see them. Layer crumbles is what we feed our chickens. But in relation to that, you need some substitution, especially if they're not free range. So they need some protein, and they need some calcium, and I really think it's a good idea to give them some scratch grains and stuff, because when you think about it, when they're out free ranging, they do get scratch grains. They get, you know, some protein, they get some, they eat grass, they eat all kinds of stuff like that. But they need their layer crumbles so they can produce good eggs, but also they need some protein, especially in the wintertime. So it's a good idea to get them some mealworms or some fly larvae or something like that. Just feed it as a snack once a day. I think we got some of that somewhere. We just get the fly fiesta for them. It's a little bit cheaper than mealworms. It's the same difference, really. And also some scratch grains like this. I feed that to them at least once a day. I kind of mix it up with their fly larvae and feed it to them, and they really, really love that. So another thing is, chickens can eat their own eggs if you cook them for them. You don't want to give them a raw one.
But you have to cook them, right?
Yeah, you need to cook them for them, and you don't want to feed them a raw egg. They may start eating their eggs if you feed them the raw egg. So you want to scramble their eggs and not put any season or anything in there, and that provides them protein, and it's good for them. Also, the chickens need calcium, so you can get oyster shells, and that provides calcium. But if you'll take their egg shells and put them in the oven for about 10 minutes and then crunch them up, you can put them in a blender or whatever you want to do with them and feed them back their egg shells, that provides calcium back to the chickens. So, you know, really, ultimately, they could produce their own food if they wanted to. They lay their eggs, they could eat them if they needed to. And let's see. You know, I like to give them some other treats once in a while, too. They can have any vegetable or that you grow in the garden most of the time. But we're going to talk about some more of that in just a few minutes. So.
All right, so, you know, they're like pets, and I know all pets like some kind of treats. So, and, you know, you feed them scraps and stuff like that. So what is safe to feed them and what is not?
Okay, so scraps, they can eat most any scrap. You know, people are like, well, They eat meat. Yeah, they eat meat. They chase grasshoppers. They love these fly larvae and mealworms. And if you've ever seen one chase a bug, they love them. Like, they'll chase a fly in the chicken pen. They love to get them and eat them. So garden vegetables. I mean, if you homestead like we do, I'm sure you probably have a garden. So they can eat, they love cucumbers. If you just cut that cucumber in half and lay it open and let them eat that cucumber. If you have one that's gotten a little overripe, they'll love it. They love the seeds out of there. They'll eat the flesh out of there and everything. And any vegetable that you can grow in your garden, they can have. A lot of people question giving them tomatoes. Now, they can have the tomato fruit, but they cannot have the vine. They're not supposed to have the vine. There's something in those leaves and vines in a tomato that are toxic, and it's not good for the chickens. So just make sure that you do not give them any vines or leaves from that tomato plant, but they can actually have the flesh. They love the tomatoes.
Now those vines are really like deadly to them.
Yeah,
aren't
they can be, especially so if you have a garden and you have free range ones, just make sure that you're careful about them, getting in there and getting into the tomato vines, because it can, in excess. I don't think one leaf would kill them, but in excess, you just don't want to take a chance with your chickens. So don't feed them, your tomato vines. Also, they call them nightshade. Don't feed them raw potatoes and any nightshade vegetable like that. They can't have that. It is toxic to them. Let's see. Apple seeds. They're not supposed to have apple seeds, but they can have most anything else. Just keep in mind, if you're going to feed them some grapes or something like that, that you need to kind of cut them up, because just like a child, they can get choked on those grapes. Or even if you're feeding them the grape tomatoes, the small ones, you want to cut those up, because they really might get choked on if they're trying to eat a whole one like that. So make sure you cut those up if you give them to them. Lettuce, they love lettuce. It's probably better to give them the dark green leafy lettuce as opposed to like iceberg lettuce. It's better for them. It gives them more nutrition, just like it does us. Spinach, broccoli, any of that. Just remember, you might want to cut it up a little bit if it's a hard vegetable, so they can eat it correctly. In the summertime, the chickens love watermelon. They just think that's the greatest ever. And mine do.
Especially on a hot day.
Yes.
We've got a video, by the way, on our channel of that, them eating watermelons.
Yes, and keeping them cool in the summertime. And pumpkin in the fall time. They love to eat pumpkin. And pumpkin is good for chickens. It actually helps with worms, and chickens can get worms just like dogs and cats do. They can get worms, especially if you don't keep your area clean. They can get worms. They do make wormer for chickens just like they do dogs and cats. So if you had that, you could get wormer for your chickens.
All right, so how often do you clean that coop? And is there some ways to keep it so you don't have to clean it as often?
Yes, it is. So let's talk about some materials for your roosting area, and let's talk about materials for your run area. Those materials can be different, or they can be the same. It's according to whether or not your run area is a place where it gets really, really wet. You want to use materials that are better for that. That's going to soak up some of that moisture and stuff. And also, it needs to be cleaned more. If if it's open and that run area is out in the open, you need to clean that more often than you would if it's not open. They can get diseases, they can get mites and bugs and worms, just like any other pet can, and you have to do cleanliness for them. So you can use, a lot of people say in their bedding area they use hemp. Well, it's kind of hard to find hemp. You can't find that to use as their, you have to order it most of the time. Around here you do. Y'all might have a different story, but around here in the South, we go to the supply store and you can't really find hemp there. So what we use is pine shavings and wood pellets. Now, wood pellets actually go in horse stalls, but they're great for the chickens. You put that as your base, and we have a video about that too.
And we've got links to all of those videos in our description below.
If you want to know more about how to clean that coop and keep it clean and the materials to use for that, we do have that video about that. But the wood pellets, they use that for horse stalls. You make you a layer of that, and then you can put your pine shavings above it. Another thing that people don't know is that you can use diatomaceous earth. Now, if you don't know about diatomaceous earth, it helps with mites. It helps keep down the ant population. Down here, we got fire ants.
And they are bad.
They're terrible. But the fire ants hate the diatomaceous earth. So I always make me a layer of diatomaceous earth, and you can order it. You can buy it at the supply store. Usually comes in a big, huge bag. It's just a...
Now, you can get them in a smaller bag.
Yeah, you can. But if you've got a lot of chickens, I just use mine often. Every time I change their bedding, I put some of that in there, and I just am very generous with it. They love to use that diatomaceous earth to take a little bath in, and that'll help with mites. And I tell people, use that, and then use a layer of maybe your wood pellets and then your pine shavings, especially in the roosting area. Now, in your run area, it's really up to you. A lot of people like to use hay, especially if you have other farm animals, horses or cows. You may want to use some hay in there, or you can use it in the roosting area too. Just keep in mind, if you're going to use hay in an area where it gets wet, if you put a lot of hay there, if it stays there for a while, it kind of gets moldy and kind of yucky up underneath. So just keep in mind that you need to clean that a little more often than you would if you use the pine shavings. And I use the big flake pine shavings also in there. And also, going back to the nesting boxes, you may want to use some actual hay in those nesting boxes also, because the hens tend to prefer that. They like to have that hay, and they kind of snack on it while they're sitting there laying their eggs.
All right, and now here's our final question. And by the way, if you've got any other questions, just let us know in the chat. You can let us know now live, or if you're watching the replay, we'll try to answer your question in the chat. This is one of those questions that you may not think to ask up front, but unfortunately, somehow it will affect a lot of people. It did affect us too.
Yeah, not too long ago.
How do you prevent predators from getting your chickens?
Okay, so number one is you need to have a safe environment at night for them to be locked up. They really need to be locked up at night if you don't want something to happen to them. Now, the materials for that, like we actually built our new chicken pen back here, and it has the fine mesh hardware cloth on it, and we thought we had it all fixed and all ready for them. Well, there was a gap that was just this big, and
I think you can kind of see, I don't know if right here, you can see where we put a board. It's not really in place. We're going to come back
and fix it.
And there's an opening where the roof overhangs.
So it was there.
Went right up in there.
So the raccoons got in there, and I had some young chickens that I had hatched. And they got in there and they killed my young chickens.
They killed the whole flock, didn't
They did. There was, well, it wasn't very many. I mean, I only had 3 in there, but still, if I would have had, you know, a bunch of them, it would have, I feel like they would have got every one of them. And so we were like, looking at that, we were like, there's no way that these raccoons can get in there, you know, to those chickens, but they did. Now, raccoons will get in there and they're a bother. They'll eat the food most of the time, and they usually won't mess with your grown chickens, but they sure killed my little baby chickens. And we know those raccoons because we saw them on the camera. So we're sure it was raccoons. But when you're building your chicken coop, also you want to put at least 2 feet of wire on the bottom, on the ground, and then maybe cover that with some dirt or some rocks, because there's other predators also. There's foxes and coyotes. They can dig up under that area where your chickens are, and they can get in there. So you don't just have the raccoons, you have, and then if you have your run area during the day, you can have hawks. So if it's
That's
not
right.
covered,
You would be surprised what a hawk can do.
Yes, I did have a hawk get in to the old chicken pen, and it killed one of my chickens, and I was just horribly heartbroken about that, and didn't never think. And owls will kill them too. When I was growing up, we actually had an owl get in them and kill the chickens. But there's several predators, so you just want to have a good fenced area. Make sure you put that fence on the ground, cover it with dirt or rocks, and that will keep anything from digging under. And make sure you think about up top too, because they can climb that fence and they can get in there and eat those babies or whatever you have in there, or just eat the food. And now snakes. The snakes will get in there, but most of the time it'll be a chicken snake, and it'll just eat your eggs. But it will eat baby chickens if.
So when you're going to check those eggs, you need to kind of be on
careful.
the lookout, because they'll surprise you.
It's kind of hard. You have to really, really try hard to keep those snakes out of there. You have to use some really small hardware cloth on the whole surrounding area to keep those snakes out of there. Now, we have found some, but most of the time they're just eating the eggs, and they're not worried about the chickens. They're eating those eggs. So.
All right, I've got a bonus question. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
All right, we've got eggs right here. I don't know if you can see them. They're different colors. It's hard to tell here because we've got some light green, light brown, and brown. And I think a lot of people like to have, you know, they see these neat different color eggs. So how do you get those different color eggs?
Okay, so these right here are black copper morans. They're the darkest egg that you can get, and I think there's a couple of more chickens that lay darker eggs, but the black copper morans lay the darkest egg that there is, and I just think they're beautiful. These are actually from my new chickens I got back in the spring. I have 2 black copper morans, and I have a rooster black copper moran. So that's where those came from. And we got, this is an Easter egger. I don't know if you can see or not, but it's a dark green color. And Easter eggers will lay these dark green colors. And also, I don't know if you can tell, but these are light green color. And they'll lay those too. So I have a bunch of Easter eggers that lay these light colored eggs, and then I have my black copper morans. But you could get a rainbow of eggs. The leghorns just lay white eggs like you would buy in the grocery store. And let me tell you this, for the longest time I kind of thought, well, the brown ones was the free range, and that's the reason that they were brown. Well, that's not true. It's the type of chicken that you have that lay these different colored eggs. So the ones you get in the grocery store, those are just regular chickens that lay the white eggs. And just because it says free range on there, they're brown, but that doesn't mean it's just because they're free range. It's the type of chicken that they are.
Okay. So how do you get, you know, like, you go to Tractor Supply here locally, I don't know if you can get all of these, can you?
No, not always. Most of the time they just have the Rhode Island Reds or a chicken that's going to lay a brown egg. They don't lay the white eggs. They'll lay the brown eggs. And sometimes at the supply stores you get the meat birds.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the meat birds lay a white egg, but you're going to eat, the meat birds anyway. We haven't got into, we want to try maybe in the future to get some meat birds and try that, but we have not tried that yet.
So how do you, if they're not available locally, what do you do?
Well, I ordered my Easter eggers and hatched my own eggs. And if you want to see a link to some of those, I think we'll have a link on that. But we have several, where we've hatched our own eggs. And just keep in mind, if you're going to hatch your own eggs, you may wind up with some roosters that you don't want.
That's the only disadvantage from hatching. Well, there's two disadvantages the way I see is you have roosters, and then if you're hatching your own eggs, you might have something wrong with the chicken and have to make a decision.
Yeah.
We're animal people. It is
hard.
Some people it doesn't bother, but it bothers us.
And you can order them from a hatchery.
You can mail order chicken.
Yeah. So my silkies, I actually ordered those hatching eggs from my hatchery, and I hatched those, and that's where they came from. But a lot of people just order the chicks from there, and you can get there's several different breeds that you can order and have your baby chickens shipped to you. Just keep in mind, it'll be a price. I mean, it's a large shipping price whenever they ship those babies to you. That's why, a lot of people just rather go to the co-op or to the supply store and buy those baby chickens instead of having them shipped. And then most post offices are really good, and they'll call you when those baby chickens come in, and you'll go get them, and they won't die or anything. With a mind to that, just make sure I would order my chickens from a well-known hatchery, that has good reviews. I would just be really, really careful about where you're ordering your baby chickens from. I didn't have a good experience with one time, and I should have done my research, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah, do your research, talk to other people, and you might find one close to you, or you might find some of these bigger ones, and we dealt with the bigger one.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll say it, Meyer, I guess we can say. They're not paying us anything, but we had good luck with them.
We did, and they were, they're awesome to work with and everything. Another thing is which I was able to do this for some friends of ours. I hatched them some chickens. I just have backyard chickens. Some of mine, they're just different breeds, and they really wanted chickens, and they wanted eggs, so I said, well, let me just hatch you some, and I did, and gave them to them. I've done that for a couple of neighbors and friends, and just something that I like doing, and hatching the eggs for people. And you may have a local, lots of people have chickens now, and you may have a local farm or whoever that's willing to sell you some chickens, or hatch them for you. And I even raised them for a little bit, I think, till they were old enough so they could take care of them, So.
Yeah, that's one thing that's really fun, especially if you've got little kids, to see those little chickens when they come out. I mean, we still get excited. There's, by the way, we've got some videos on our channel that's got of us hatching chickens, and the first time that we hatched chickens, that was, we didn't know what to expect that time.
No, we didn't, but it was
really
amazing.
Fun.
Yes, it was.
So hopefully that helps people out, and we're going to try to do these live streams on homesteading and a lot on chickens too. We're going to try to do these probably every Sunday evening. We're in the Central Time Zone, and we're going to probably start them around 6 o'clock Central Time Zone. So if you tuned in live, thank you very much. And if you think of a question, just leave it in the chat. So hope everybody has a good week, and take a look at our other videos, and if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe